Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am O'Brien McMahon, and this is People Business. In this episode, I'm joined by Mike White and Ken DeBauche, the co-founders of a company called Secchi that is helping transform the way supervisors in manufacturing and healthcare settings are interacting with frontline employees. We cover a lot of how Secchi works in this, but more than making this a commercial, I was really interested in diving into the way that they have approached these problems that have been problems throughout our blue-collar workforces for a long time. Just the tediousness that it can take to manage incidents in some of these environments, to manage performance in some of these environments, and the negative connotations that have been created between the workforce and HR, who's really just trying to help supervisors create a better experience for employees. And so that's really what this whole conversation is. How do we create a better experience for the 80 to 90 million manufacturing, healthcare, distribution, frontline labor employees that are out there driving our economy? Really interesting conversation. Love the way these guys are thinking about it. Hope it's helpful and insightful for you as you're running your business, especially if you are navigating a workforce like this. But even regardless, I think it's just interesting to understand how other people in different walks of life are approaching problems that we all have when we're managing people in the workplace. If you are interested in this topic or any other topic that we talk about on the show, feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way, or through our website at peoplebusinesspodcast.com. Here are Mike and Ken. Mike, Ken, welcome to the show. Interested to have you guys on today because I always get excited when we are talking about something that we haven't talked about on here before. About 170-ish episodes in, it's getting harder and harder to find things we haven't covered when it comes to the human side of work. But you guys are really focused in on a specific niche and solving certain problems in certain industries. And I think it'd be really interesting today. So could we just start, I guess, by having each of you guys introduce your backgrounds and how you came to found Secchi?
Yeah. Start it off. Thanks, O'Brien. I have just under 20 years of experience working in manufacturing, distribution, supply chain, HR. And I started out in a factory in Georgia, and I did the steel workers there. And supervisors were saying, hey, we aren't allowed to address any of our performance issues. HR doesn't let us do anything. And I thought, I don't want to be in the way of work getting done. And I work with some folks. We created an access database that basically just kept really good notes. And we were able to change the performance of that facility, completely change the performance of that facility through performance management. And I thought, oh, this is a great idea. I'm gonna go meet a programmer. And I met with a programmer, and they told me it cost me a lot of money. And I said, the big dogs will figure this out. The UKGs, the Workdays, the ADPs. And 20 years later, I'm sitting in a union shop, been through non-union shops, and every single site I've ever worked at had the same problem of frontline leaders not doing documentation, not being consistent, not writing warnings the legal way, not doing a good job of recognizing all those things. And 2 years ago, I had a meeting with the UAW where we had to pay a bunch of people back pay. And I thought, I know what fixes this. What fixes this is a really good process. And how can I create that? And I did it through a software. And along the way, I ran into Ken and our other co-founder, Rudy, and we were able to put together a pretty darn good package that cut turnover in half.
And so,
that's
Ken,
a short story.
No, that's great. And we got some questions to unpack that. But Ken, how do you enter the picture, and what's your background?
Yeah. Thanks, O'Brien. So I came into the picture probably about a year and a half ago at this point. I met Mike through our business partner, Rudy, who joined forces with Mike a couple months before I did. At the time, I was doing patient experience and staff engagement software in healthcare. And the more we started talking, the more we started unpacking what Mike was doing at Secchi. It got me really excited, and there were so many parallels. We eventually decided to work on it together.
Very cool.
Yeah, the irony was, O'Brien, is that I met Ken at a place called Blue Collar Coffee, which is a great place, but there's nothing blue collar about $6-7 cup of coffee. The blue collar coffee I'm used to is actually on the plant floor that usually is overcooked. But I told Ken, I said, this software is all about the blue collar worker, the frontline worker that doesn't get the opportunities that sometimes doesn't get the opportunities that other folks do.
So, Mike, I want to unpack a little bit of what you had said about the story, kind of the origin story here. When you were in that first job and they had said, HR doesn't let us do performance reviews, why was that perception there? And was that just that facility, or is that sort of a dominant perception across more blue collar working environments?
I mean, it's a theme in every factory I've been in. Is if I really think about it, it's driven by the controls. Typically, the thing that you do when somebody makes a mistake is you put in a control, right? So with all the pitfalls that go into HR, controls have put in place to take more and more responsibility off the frontline supervisor. So you got to run everything by HR. You got to get your department head approval. Then you got to get HR approval. Then you got to get plant manager approval. Or it got so bad at one of my places of work that was a Fortune 50 company that we had to get approval as a business partner. I still had to get approval next level up. And so when mistakes are made in HR, we throw in these rules. And what happens is these rules stop your leaders from wanting to do the right thing. And also on top of it is wanting to do it's one thing, but then giving them the ability to do it is another. And so what I just intuitively knew, I didn't really know what I was doing because I was right out of school. I was as green as you possibly could be. But I intuitively knew that if we can make this process easier, and I think the supervisors want to do the right thing. So that's where the whole, the first kind of even thought came up.
And, there can be the perception, at least in a factory environment or a distribution environment, the us versus them dynamics can be very strong, stronger than in an office environment, although they for sure exist there too. Is that sort of some of what contributes to that, the need for rules and bureaucracy? Like, these people need to be managed. We can't trust them to do the right thing. Is there some hangover from that perception that's causing some of this?
Yeah. This is interesting. I'm analyzing this right off the top of my head, but probably driven, the two biggest drivers that immediately come to mind are most operations are run by engineers, and engineers control for the uncontrollable. They're people who think, and I'm generalizing here, but they're people who think 10 steps ahead of your average, Joe on the street. They've thought about, okay, what if this happens? What if that happens? So what inevitably where that heads to is a long list of rules because, we didn't have a rule for doing donuts on the back pad. Let's create a rule for that. And it becomes a systematic kind of process for those engineers. The other side of it is 1 hour of time. And I learned this early on in labor negotiations because I tried to create value through the labor negotiation is 1 hour of time in a manufacturing plant is a lot of money. And so when you have downtime and when you have productivity issues, money is flying out the door. And so with that controls and the impact of the decisions made, it's like, how do we narrow this scope smaller and smaller and smaller for these supervisors not to make mistakes? But as we all know, is the less risk you take, the less reward you have. And think about that from a people standpoint is most frontline leaders are guys and gals that were really good operators. They showed up on time. They're respected. They get promoted into this role as leader. Well, they were really good at one skill set that now they have a whole new skill set that they're seeing life through their lens of, yeah, you show up on time. Duh. Like, this isn't hard. You show up on time. Oh, that's not a big deal. You work hard when you're here. You don't goof around. You don't take long breaks. That's what I do. But that lens of being a great performer and then getting into a supervisory role and your eyes open up and you go, oh my gosh, I got promoted because I'm different. And I've actually had that conversation many times is you're here because you're different. You're in this role because you're different. Now they get that. Now, oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to ask you to write legally binding, legal documents that you're going to stand in front of, you're going to get deposed on, you're going to get in front of, employment lawyers, and you got a diverse workforce. So there's all these pitfalls of age, race, sex. You got to make sure you do everything consistently and perfectly. It's a huge, overwhelming jump from that operator to supervisor. And that's where we came in. It's like, how do I fix that emotional challenge?
Yeah. Ken, you came from a healthcare background. There can be some similarities in a healthcare environment and in a warehouse environment. Just people are on their feet every day. They're doing work all the time, around the clock. You can't pull them off the line or out of care environments as easily. How do you see these issues translating into that environment? Are they the same? Are they different?
Yeah, great question. They're the same. And we say it all the time is people are people, no matter where they are. And to make the connection to healthcare, in healthcare, call it a nurse leader who would be very equivalent to the manufacturing supervisor in the world of Secchi. That person is overworked, underpaid, underappreciated, gets everything thrown on their plates. And that's the same thing that we're seeing in a manufacturing or food production setting, is that middle manager, that supervisory role. That person is expected to do everything for their people. If there's a task, if it's a people-related task, if it's a non-people related task, it falls in the plate of that very busy, overworked, underpaid, underappreciated person. So back to your question about the origin story and some of the points that Mike was making. When I first started talking with Mike about Secchi and we were understanding what really the value proposition of our software was and where it could go, Mike's initial thought, his brainchild on what Secchi could be useful on was, and I'll just put it very succinctly, is it was to help that supervisor fire bad employees easier. Because there are so many things that happen in any given day that supervisor, that leader knows that person could be a bad apple, that person is detrimental to the rest of the team, that person, that frontline employee isn't doing the right things, isn't showing up on time. So make it easier to fire a person who is detrimental to the team. But because of all the things that Mike mentioned, it can be very difficult in some cases to do that.
Yeah, I'm jumping in here, Ken, to make sure I don't seem like a heartless person.
Jump in, Mike. Don't sound like a bad guy.
Right.
You're not a bad guy.
I'm not a bad guy. We need to have the hero in the story. The hero in the story is the frontline person that works their ass off. And it is such an injustice to me. Like, I can feel my heart rate going up every time I talk about this. It's such an injustice to me of what we do to our great employees. So our top, 30 to 40%, and then those middle folks that show up every day and do a good job and do the right thing and follow the rules and don't cause problems. It is such an injustice to me that we allow folks that go out, take smoke breaks, get on their cell phone, watch a game while they're supposed to be working, and the person next to them is just working their absolute ass off for the company or for the manager or for the supervisor. And that just gets so far under my skin of like, hey, there's only one or two people at your facility right now. And I have a number. If you tell me how many people you have in your facility, I know how many bad apples you have. And luckily enough, somebody else will raise their hand and get in the bad apple group. But I have found that there's the best thing you can do for a culture is to take care of those just detrimental people. And here in HR, there's a reason that when I walked in that job, they said HR didn't let me. The previous 5 years, they had fired 5 people, and they were all for grossly negligent items, like punching someone, having relations at work. Like these are like, you just have to fire folks for those. And we then changed the culture by, hey, no, if you're being bad to the good employees, we're not going to let you be here. And think of it more like I think of it from the great employees perspective. How do we cater to the great employees, not the employees that say, you don't have a rule for that. You don't have a rule for that. I can do what I want,
Yeah. Yeah. So understanding that you are a technology system that helps people manage all of this, there's still a behavior change portion of this that's needed, right? Where you implement this and people need to learn how to do this. There are skills underlying the use of your technology. So when you go into a new client, where do you start from a skill building standpoint? How do you start to bring those supervisors along so that they don't just shut off and go, this is just another thing I have to do?
Yeah, that's usually, this is just another thing. It's so funny to me. I bang my head against the wall. Every place has a system in play. There's a system. You have a system. And a lot of our clients have email, like, how do you keep track of documentation for coaching? Oh, I have a book here. We keep it in our notebook. We keep it on a Word document. We email it to ourselves. That's just, like it's 1997. We email it to HR. They put it in a spreadsheet. That spreadsheet's only protected. They have all these wild systems and processes that are created. If I showed you my large facility at Caterpillar's, the worksheet that we had in HR was gigantic. And HR folks, if they're listening, they know of this worksheet, the Excel sheet. They have these two. You have one with all the attendant points. You have one with that. You pay somebody 2.5 days a week to keep track of it. So when we go into the frontline leader, the way I get them, the way I set the hook is I said, hey, how many times do you get asked how many attendance points do you have a night? And the answer is inevitably between 3 to 5 times a night. Your frontline supervisors being asked how many points do they have. Okay, now let's do a quick time study in our head. Okay, they're off the floor. Let's say it takes 3 minutes to get off the floor. If they're a talker, they're spending 10 minutes talking to me. I have to log in. I have to go look up their points in some Excel sheet. They argue about one of the points on the Excel sheet. I then have to contact HR. Now I have another meeting with the 3 of them. We're losing hours and hours of work for absolutely no value add. So what the main reason our supervisor adoption rate's super high, the main reason that it's, if they have a point system set in, that saves them hours and hours a week. We just got back from a customer that the plant manager was skeptical. And I said, I talked to your team. I'm going to save every supervisor probably 2 hours a week. I'm saving your HR team 5 hours a week. And guess what? They have everything at their fingertips on top of that. That's the pitch.
Yeah. And to pile onto that, the first thing that Mike just unpacked there, O'Brien, is we take a ton of work off of that supervisor's plate. And to the training point, we train supervisors in 15 minutes or less. And once they have the software in their hands on their mobile device from their phone, or however they're going to access it, they can see in the moment this saves me a ton of time. So there's that immediate buy-in. Wow, this is a real helper for me. And then the second piece where we've kind of, and maybe I took us down to firing bad people. I took us down the negative path. I'm going to kind of guide us toward the positive. And this is what we're hearing from our customers as really the core driver of what Secchi does and what we do is once a supervisor a leader is able to easily recognize and encourage the right behaviors through recognition. So click of a button, send recognition to their employee in the moment. That's that quick dopamine hit. I like giving people recognition. And the person that I just sent recognition to that normally doesn't get recognition, or at least not in this format, they're excited about it. And that frontline employee now has something that they can take home with them that says, hey, my leader just said I did a great job. Here, look at this message that I got from Secchi that says, thanks for going above and beyond. And that's something that person has that they can take with them, that they can hang their hat on, that normally in that role they're not going to have.
In what format are they getting that recognition?
Yeah, this is important.
Good question.
Very important is your employees do not want to download an app on their phone, especially if they're frontline employees. One is, and I'm one of these guys. I don't want Big Brother watching me. It's funny. One of my friends said, "You are big." One of my union friends said, "You are Big Brother." And I said, "Yeah, I guess so." But in this case, frontline employees do not want a company app, and then you have to reset the password. You have multi-MFAs, multi-authentication, factor authentications. All that stuff. So we do it through text message, and the employee can get a text message every time they're recognized, which they show it off at home. You know, some of us like written word rather than just said. And then the other time they get a text message is anytime they're logged as being late. So we improve the quality of their attendance tracking. And if any of your listeners say, oh, our payroll system does it, your payroll system does not do it. I will bet you a paycheck it doesn't do it. I'll bet you a company it doesn't do it the right way. And so they get a text that way, and then they can interact with our system so the employees can actually text, for those that use point systems, points to our system, and it will tell them how many they have. So
they can just text you and say points. So they don't even have to go to their manager and say, how many points do I have? They can just text it and get it right back.
They know in the moment when they're logged as being late, and they know in the moment, and they can know at any 24/7 where they stand with their attendance.
Okay.
So you just eliminated a ton of work.
I was just going to say that timely in the moment recognition accompanied with timely in the moment accountability. So the carrot and the stick in the moment can make all the difference. Back to that team and the bad apples that Mike was touching on earlier.
How do you get the supervisors to adopt recognition? Is that a challenge? I could see if that's not something they're doing, I could see that being a difficult part of this, to express themselves, be a little vulnerable, thank somebody else. Like how hard or easy is that adoption?
Yeah, I think there's different levels. So the beauty of the data that we keep is we can see across the board, across shifts, and we can create standards for companies. So I would venture to guess 100% of the people that I mentioned 60 plus facilities. So let's say each facility has 10 supervisors, maybe some had 20. So let's say 10 supervisors, 600 supervisors. If I ask them all tomorrow, are they good at recognition? 100% would say they're good at it. 100%, bar none. That's another bet I'll take any day of the week. What's funny is every single engagement survey I've ever said, and you're in this business too, O'Brien, of recognition is top 3. Career development's always in the top 3 in recognition. And then there's kind of it switches off in my experience. And so there's a huge disconnect of what people perceive and what the supervisor perceives. So getting the data there drives the right behavior, and adopting it is we generally have one or two really quick adopters that love doing it, and they're going to bring the rest of the crew up.
Mm.
And then you get insights into what employees, what keeps them coming back is the employees come back to the supervisor and say, thank you. And then they're like, oh, we're connecting this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the quick answer to that is the Hawthorne effect. So what gets measured will start to affect people's behaviors. And one of the key drivers to recognition, like Mike just said, is all supervisors being able to see in a report that, hey, O'Brien as a leader is giving a ton of recognition to his team. And his team is really thriving because of that. And then you can see in a stack rank list who else is giving recognition or not giving recognition. So it's a little bit of a gamification of recognition itself that really makes that difference.
That's a good point. And I had wanted to ask you about reporting anyway. So that's one piece, I guess, right, is showing, hey, who's giving out recognition and then how are their teams performing? What are the other key, you call them KPIs, metrics, whatever, like what are the other key elements of the reporting that you're providing that allow an employer to influence the behavior of their supervisors and frontline employees?
Yeah, I'll kick it off, Mike, and then you back me up on it. But some of the really interesting information that we're able to pull that does not exist elsewhere, and I mentioned the carrot and the stick earlier, is we're able to see across all leaders in an organization who's giving recognition, who's not, who's holding their teams accountable, who's not, and what the balance is. Are they using all carrots and no sticks, or all sticks and no carrots? And we can quickly see what their culture is. It a culture of accountability, or is it a culture of recognition, or is it a mix thereof? Another report that we're able to quickly see across the board that makes an impact on people's behaviors is recognition streaks. So this isn't so much for the supervisor, it's for the frontline employee, where sometimes somebody's best ability is their availability, and just showing up is the most important thing that they can do during their day. But that can quickly and easily be overlooked. But with what we're doing, we highlight those streaks of attendance. So let's say that Mike had an attendance streak where he didn't call in, no call, no show, didn't show up late, and he's had perfect attendance for the last 310 days. That shows up front and center within Secchi, so that the supervisor can then give Mike recognition for that attendance streak. And that's, I mentioned gamification before. That's another gamification component that hasn't historically been done in human capital management systems, where we can see who has the best streak of attendance. And then that will start to highlight, hey, Mike's doing a great job through his attendance. Who else is going to be a high performer like that?
Yeah. So Brian, that came from your world is in manufacturing, but if you walk into a manufacturing plant, most say, and even if you drive by them, sometimes they say it's been 200 days since our last accident, right?
Yep.
And so I'm like, how can we make it an individual showing up? Even your great employees, if they miss days, you can't make that up. It takes months to make that up. So I know it's table stakes, but it is a huge driver of productivity. And so I was like, hey, how can we create a way to get people to show up and then make it so it's meaningful for somebody? And I use example, and I assume you're a Bears fan.
I'm not. I'm a transplant to the Chicago area.
Oh,
so I
man.
will admit that I'm not.
Who are you?
You're not going to like me when I say it, but I grew up a Patriots fan.
Patriots. Okay, great. So as a Patriots fan, gosh, I threw off this whole podcast.
It's got in your head now.
Yeah. Let's just say you're a Chicago guy.
Sure.
And I'm from Central Illinois. Ken's from Wisconsin. Ken actually had a cup of coffee with the Packers. So he's a Packer fan. On Monday Night Football, which my wife is also a Packer fan and loves to point out how many quarterbacks we've been through. And they always show that, and it's a late game, and let's say it goes to overtime. Well, here in Wisconsin, there is, I don't know if you're aware of this, there's a drinking cheese culture. So on Tuesday morning, I've had factories in Wisconsin, you can almost guarantee there's going to be a lot of call-offs. What we want to do is we want to incentivize that employee, not by money, but just by pride of, hey, am I going to take that shot? Am I going to have that extra beer? Am I going to stay up late? Or am I going to drive home in between overtime and that overtime game so that I show up to work on Tuesday? Because I'm almost to a year of perfect attendance, and it's a pride point. And we have a customer that the employees just love this, and they reward it, and their productivity, all their numbers are headed in the right direction.
How do they reward it? What does that actually look like?
So there's a few different ways. The manager, so at this specific customer, Fortune 500 distribution center, the managers recognize, so we send recognition texts, right? Supervisors are recognizing for day to day, but the manager doesn't know necessarily what exactly that employee is doing day to day. So most of that streak recognition comes from the manager, and we prompt them within the system to say, hey, this person's at every 15 days, they get a prompt. That's a way for them to connect that they haven't before. So your manager knows who you are. And then we have other sites that create clubs. So you're in the 100-day club, you're in the 300-day club, you're in the 500-day club, and they have all sorts of names for those clubs. But yeah, and you get called out, perfect attendance for the month. Your name can get called out at the all-employee meeting, those type of methods.
Still rewarding through recognition.
Yes. Now, some people are doing dollars and throwing in incentive, throwing rewards in there, but it's funny. There's a group of people that are just going to use it as a pride point and show up every day because that's what they do.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation too. And I don't know if you've read like Daniel Pink's book Drive or studies on the detrimental role that extrinsic motivators can have on performance. The most heartbreaking one to me is that if you pay kids to read books, when you stop paying them to read books, they won't read on their own anymore. Like you can literally kill a kid's desire to read for potentially the rest of their life by paying them to read books when they're young. And it's just like, that one breaks my heart. Anyway, that's an aside. But yeah, like it would seem to me like, I like what you're talking about. Like, hey, let's reward you with intrinsic motivate. Like, I guess there's still some extrinsic to getting the recognition, but it's really like, let's build some intrinsic motivation, some pride within that person of like, hey, you're in this club. Oh, great. I want to stay in this club. It feels good to be in this club. I want to go get to that next club rather than here's some dollars because you did this. Oh, great. If I do it again, maybe I'll get some dollars.
2 points on that, O'Brien. That's really interesting that you bring it up. One is, I think a big part of what we're doing is we're uncovering the people with great attendance. This is one example of what we do, the attendance piece, but just to focus in on that, we're uncovering people who are already really thriving there and doing a great job. And we're highlighting those people when they historically haven't been highlighted. So that's the first piece of it. And the second piece of it is that person who maybe wasn't as motivated to show up on time and have perfect attendance, they are now making small changes in their behaviors to show up on time. And just very, very specific success story with a logistics customer that we have is once they implemented Secchi, they reduced their lates, so people showing up late to a shift, by 50%. That might not sound like a lot.
That sounds like a big number.
It is. It turns out that it is, and it has a huge impact because what happens is, and we'll play this example out a little bit, somebody shows up 3, 4, 5 minutes late for a shift. Sure, that one person, they're missing a few minutes of work, but in a lot of settings, they might have a beginning of shift safety huddle. And if they know that, if everybody knows the 15 people that are starting on that shift at that time need to wait for that one person, that's not just 3 minutes for that one person. That's 3 extra minutes for that entire group. And if that happens, that starts to be a part of how that business is run, and everybody's showing up maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 8 minutes late for a shift, then that shift starts that much later. So that safety huddle starts that much later. The work starts that much later. So with this logistics customer, the amount of lates over a 90-day period went down by 50%, which ultimately meant that their productivity at that one facility went up by 15%. So small changes like highlighting attendance, addressing attendance, giving recognition for the people who are doing the right things, that can really make a big difference to the bottom line.
And if you think about the front line, O'Brien, I'll add even more to that is not just that 3 minutes you waited. It's the recommunication. It's the reassignment. It's you show up, you have one person show up 15 minutes late. Now I have to stop what I'm doing as a supervisor. I have to talk with them. I got to go adjust something in payroll. I got to make sure they have a point. I got to talk to HR. I got to do a missed punch thing. I have to email the other shift. And really what I found is we did a quick time study and a supervisor spending up to 10% of their week dealing with this. 10% of a supervisor's time dealing with nothingness. And you then have 6 hours off the floor. We've done a time study, 6 hours off the floor that the supervisor's not working, the employee's not working. And on top of that, you're creating 16 to 20 disengagement opportunities, of which the worst. A lot of manufacturing folks, and I got taught this early on, is I thought my master's degree meant anything. It doesn't mean anything on a production floor. And I got slam dunked a million times. So I lost it I put it in a drawer. I never saw it for a while. There are really brilliant people in factories across this country. Brilliant folks. The thing that attracts those folks to manufacturing is the steadiness and the mastery. You talked about Daniel Pink, right? Driven by mastery. Yep. And getting into the details. And those are your best employees in every factory. And what we do when that happens is we have somebody come in late and we disrupt that mastery person that doesn't make a big stink, that does a good job. And on top of it is you're spending the missed opportunity, your frontline leader working on projects and all that. So their productivity just, like, I cried when they told me. I was like, I knew this would be a good idea, but that was one of our beta customers a while back. And I was like, this is gold. This is gold for operations. So,
yeah. So we've talked about punishing people for attendance. We've talked about rewarding and recognizing people for attendance. We've talked a little bit about rewarding them for performance. But what are the other elements that managers or supervisors are tracking with your systems? Like, what are the other key pieces to being a really great people leader in one of these environments?
So let me ask you this, O'Brien. What's the most direct reports you've ever had?
One.
Tell me, do you enjoy doing their performance review?
Well, I've done plenty of performance reviews. No, they're never super enjoyable.
Never. Okay. What a frontline leader, what the HRIS systems that are out there, and we're a bolt-on, we're a layer on. We make their HRIS, we can connect to any of them. We make their HRIS system better. Is this idea of goal setting for your frontline employees is not realistic. If you have, the most I've ever had is 8 direct reports. The performance review process was miserable for me, although I love telling them great stuff and I love coaching and all that, but you got to go through a bunch of paperwork. You got to review goals, all that. So what we do is on a production floor, it's 4 things. Just break it down. Let's make this super simple. It's 4 things. It's your attendance, which we talked about. We want to talk about recognition for attendance as well, but it's the recognition of your day-to-day. Hey, you helped out a teamwork. You came in when you didn't need to. I like to use the clean up the oil. Thank you for cleaning up the oil, because nobody likes cleaning up oil. Sending that recognition is a piece of it. Keeping track of their corrective actions and doing it consistently. So we make it so easy for supervisors to not be creators, but to be editors of those corrective actions. And then we add the controls. So HR gets a text message. They approve within minutes of it writing. So you're able to get that reinforcement in the moment. And then the last is coaching. So with that coaching, those are the one-on-one check-ins. Those are the reviews, the quality numbers. Those are reviewing the team numbers, how they affect the team, all those. If you can do those 4 things right for 30 to 40 people, it is a productivity and an engagement just game changer. And the problem that every facility I've ever been in, including the ones I'm selling to, the problem is the process to do those 4 things are all over the place. So if we can make it easy enough that I can train you in 15 minutes how to do it, it's awesome for that frontline leader. It's engaging for the employee. And then on top of it is we have a data set that nobody else has. So we right now can write AI written performance reviews. Of course, you need to have a supervisor check it. But we can take away the whole process of writing the review because we have all your recognition, we have all your attendance, we have all your coaching. AI can say, oh, okay, O'Brien, you did great on this. I really wish you'd work on this commitment. And then these are the things you need to work on. These are the things you're doing great. We love you at this company. And now a supervisor can do a real performance review with their at scale.
And open up goal setting a little bit more, because you said, you know, goal setting is really hard in these environments. Like, what does a goal look like for one of these employees? And like, what kinds of things are we talking about?
Yeah, I laugh. Okay, so this is me, 23 years old. I created this nice Microsoft Word, put graphics in it, and I said, I got in front of, I hope I can forward this to him, Bobby and John. And there's 2 other guys too, but Bobby and John, they gave me a hard time. And Chris F was there too. And I said, guys, you're going to do performance reviews. This is October timeframe. I said, here's your packet. Here's your template. And this is a supervisor meeting. Mind you, I'm early 20s. They roasted me for the whole supervisor meeting about how stupid my idea was. I was like, we're going to grade them on their attendance, their quality. They had 40 direct reports, and they started doing the times. In operations, we do this a lot. How much time is it going to take a supervisor to do? It was going to take 80 hours for them to do their team. If none of the employees complained to HR, then you add another 20 on top of that, on top of their regular job. They figuratively, they didn't really do this, but they figuratively crumpled it up and threw it in my face. And the reality is, when your team goals work great on an individual level in manufacturing, we all want to be a part of a team. We all want to accomplish goals. We want to feel, back to your Daniel Pink, we want to feel that sense of purpose, that we're part of something bigger. In practicality, hourly employees generally, and there's exceptions, generally are being measured against their job duties. So I pay you for time. In exchange for that time, you complete these duties. Some factories have the ability to do it on an individual basis, and you can set individual goals. That's the exception. Most factories, you're jumping in, you're getting on the forklift because somebody didn't show up. You're running the machine today. Hey, so-and-so needs help. We're behind in this area. You're going over there. So the actual tracking of that productivity or that individual goal is not possible. So what we do instead in HR is we pencil whip the hell out of some form that looks at attendance, quality, production, velocity. And your supervisor thinks about the last 2 weeks, and they have a giant recency bias. And if they fish with the supervisor, they hunt with the supervisor, that means they're getting the highest grade. So we take all that, and I'm doing shop talk with you right now. We take all that BS and we put it into, we have data. We use data to actually make those decisions. So now I'm measuring you off hourly performance management, what you did good, what you did wrong, and did you show up every day as scheduled? If you can do that, if you do those simple things, you're ahead of 90% of the production and manufacturing world.
And do those things then just get checked off automatically, or is that still work that a supervisor has to go in and do?
So the supervisor's going in and throughout the year just making little, all I'm asking a supervisor to do is, hey, instead of making mental notes, or instead of writing it on a sheet of paper that you'll never go back and look at, or instead of putting it in a Word document you only open when people are in trouble, go into Secchi and write a quick note. instead of emailing yourself, write a quick note. And then you have the recognition, you have the coaching, you have the discipline, and it's all right there at your fingertips. Now, when I do performance reviews at the end of the year, actually that Fortune 500 company, that was a huge win for them. The guy named Steve told me, I said, hey, how's it going? He's like, you have no idea how much time you saved me because I could just press the instant performance report button on our employees. And he said, this used to take me like 3 or 4 days. And now it took me like 4 hours.
Yeah, just because it summarizes everything. You don't have to look back through everything. It just summarizes the performance.
It's right there. And the program's built. I'm a manufacturing guy. It's visual factory management. It's a lean tool where if you've been in you've been in hospitals, you've been in manufacturing, the idea of like you don't even have to think about it visually. You just know what it means.
Yeah, intuitive design.
Yep.
Yeah. So on that topic, O'Brien, I know this is something that we had talked about in the past that I think resonates with a lot of people that are likely listening is what we do for leaders is give them a leadership relationship management tool or something similar to CRM, customer relationship management, leader relationship or employee relationship management. So like Mike was mentioning, it's all those little connections in the aggregate. We're not asking them to do something that they're not already doing. We're just asking them to do it in one place and do it a lot easier than they used to do.
Yeah. Simplify the essence of what that person is there to do, what they're doing well, what they're not doing well, and then move on.
Yeah. Yeah. Think of it like, O'Brien, think of it like when you first started driving, did you have MapQuest when you first started driving?
Was MapQuest the one you had to print out?
Yes.
Yeah. When I first started driving, it was original maps and printed out MapQuest instructions.
I think I was 16 when MapQuest came out, and it was a game changer. We became pirates looking for treasure, and and we're reading maps, and I like to compare frontline leadership and leadership in general to us driving for the first time. Is you got to make a lot of wrong turns to be good at directions, and I grew up in Central Illinois, and I worked in cornfields, so I found cornfields in the middle of nowhere. So in my family's farming, so you had to be good at that. And I compare Secchi to very much like we pencil and paper, and then we went to a Garmin, right, or TomTom, and you had them in your car, and then we eventually got it on our cell phone. Where like everybody's good at directions. From being from Central Illinois, going from Champaign to I got a name Joliet. Would have been a absolute minefield of scariness.
Yeah.
But now a 16-year-old can do it on their phone. What we've done is we've taken forklift drivers that have zero leadership experience or operators with zero leadership experience, and we give them those turn-by-turn directions. So they're still going to do stuff wrong. I mean, there's stuff the software doesn't do. They're still going to mess up, but they're not going to mess up on the basics. They're not going to mess up on right versus left or north versus south. They're going to get the basics done, and then they have to develop their own style of leadership.
Yeah. Well, and I love the concept of choice architecture. And can you create an environment? Can you design, to your point around design, can you design an environment that's so simple and intuitive that people just default to doing the right thing?
Yep.
I'm laughing as you're talking about MapQuest because I can remember I grew up in Connecticut and I went to school in Ohio, and I would print out, I think it was 2 full pages worth of directions. And I would just sit there with them in the center console as I would drive out 12 hours to school. And I'd just be like, God, I hope I haven't missed this interchange.
Right.
And then you'd have the backup map just in case to make sure you hadn't gone past your turn yet.
Right. If you think texting and driving's unsafe, try reading MapQuest and driving across how many states did you go through? 4 or 5 states.
Yeah.
Yeah. We might have used it on spring break too. I don't think we even had a Garmin on spring break, but we had those printed off like 5 pages driving down to Daytona Beach.
Yep. Good old days.
Yeah. And what's funny is like I shouldn't say thousands. I probably have done thousands. I mean, literally maybe not all in the classroom setting, but I've done hundreds of supervisor meetings and trainings, and then thousands one-on-one, where I basically am giving them that MapQuest document. I'm like, here is the write-up form. Here is what you need to say here. But you're asking them to be creators, not editors. And so if I can give it to you in an editor type mindset, then those guys and gals that just got off the floor and a supervisor, it's not so intimidating.
Yeah.
And a lot of the problem we solve is we solve the tactical turn by turn directions. We also solve the emotional piece where I'm like, this is a big deal. This is going to, this is going to upset their livelihood. They're going to be mad at me. But if I have the data right there, the data speaks for itself. It's no longer an emotional thing. It's, hey, Sarah, you've missed 2 times and I coached you on cell phones last week. And now we need to get to the documentation side of things. Or it's that emotional side at the end of the year. I got to write this big old performance review. How do I do a performance review? They want me to put it in Workday. It's going to be there forever. Oh, scary, scary, scary. No, it's right here. You coached them throughout the year. It's no problem. You've been doing it, once a week. You told Sarah how good she was. Now I know what she's good at because I can just click the button.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, this has been a really interesting conversation, and it's one that doesn't get talked about, I think, enough. We talk about office culture and that kind of thing, but we don't talk as much around manufacturing culture and frontline culture in a more blue collar environment or a healthcare environment. I think that those environments aren't as conducive to touchy-feely conversations that don't have tangible outcomes. And I think to be able to take the human element and still make it really tangible, I think that's a win-win. So it's been really fun to hear about how you guys are approaching these situations. Where can people find more about Secchi and engage with you if they feel like they want to learn more about this?
Yeah, they can come right to our website at secchi.io. That's secchi.io. Our contact information is right there. We can give a demo from the site. We're on all the social medias as well. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, I should say. Reach out to us there as well.
Hey, before you leave, Brian, that comment of we don't think about that, I would say 58.1% of people think about that. And it's just not talked about because we're sitting in front of computers. Our job's to sit in front of computers and analyze and sell. And so 82.3 million people are working hourly jobs right now, 82.3 million, which is a majority of the workforce. Yet I would say a majority of the conversation is, are we returning to the office? Well, the guys and gals that are making America, that are building America, that are manufacturing America, they never had a day outside the office. So even when we were still scared, those critical, important jobs, I just can't express my appreciation to the folks that actually build this country. And I think that's why that injustice thing is such a big deal to me, is addressing and rewarding those great employees, not the bad ones. And I just drop you one other quick stat is for those finance folks, is that it's really funny to me. As much as we do in finance and look at numbers, your labor costs are a majority of the cost in most businesses. So we control a big piece of that labor cost. And if people are looking to get more out of their labor, you just got to empower that frontline leader to do their job.
Yeah. Well, and if you want to get more out of that labor, you also have to improve the employee experience, right? We talk a lot about employee experience in an office setting. We don't talk about it as much in a manufacturing setting, but I don't remember whether you or Ken said earlier, people are people. Yeah. And so, whatever your perceptions of those people are, they're still human beings. They want to be recognized. They want, to your point, they want to be building mastery. They want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. And so to be able to give that to people in whatever role they're playing is how you're really going to harness the full potential of your workforce.
Exactly. Right on, man.
Thank you for what you're doing. Wish you both the best of success with Secchi, and encourage anyone who has one of these workforces to check out Secchi, reach out to these guys and see if they can help.
Thanks, O'Brien.
Thanks, O'Brien.
Hey folks, one last thing before you go. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to hit subscribe so you can stay up to date with future guests. That's it. Thanks for coming. Go make the most of your business and the people in it.